Hey, a very good morning to everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion that will cover lessons from the ECB trials from experiment to impact. We have a couple of wonderful panelists here ready for you who are not only experts in their fields, but also very familiar with the ECB trials. And I think we can really give you some insights here today that many of you, I'm sure, have been wanting to get. And at this point, a great thank you to all the panelists for being here, and of course to the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center for helping us with the organizational setup of this panel. And of course, if you're not familiar with some of the panelists, they will introduce themselves and their organizations in just a minute. However, before we start, I would like to do two things. I would like to give a very brief and general introduction to the ECB trials and experiments, just so everyone is on the same page. And I would also like to get you started with one thought on the atomicity of delivery versus payment. And this thought, of course, can be picked up by the panelists later in the discussion round. My name is Marc. I'm a senior manager in the blockchain practice at Define. I've worked with several clients on tokenization, electronic securities, and of course, DLT-based payments, especially in the ECB trials. And I would like to bring this experience to good use and now talk a little bit about the ECB trials and what they actually are. I would first of all like to start by saying, so why were the ECB trials even taking place? What have they been addressing? And the thing is that over the last couple of years, actually, many market participants have started to create assets, securities based on blockchain technology. And while this has been going on for a while, tokenization, digital electronic securities, what has been missing really is the payment side of things. And the ECB now really tries to address this gap with the ECB trials. And of course, other issues, other topics, other ideas of payments on DLT are also currently being discussed, like stable coins, e-money tokens according to MiCA, commercial bank money tokens, and so forth. But the ECB really wanted to address the issue here that, of course, when it comes to securities and their settlement, market participants usually want to use central bank money to do their payments. And so the Eurosystem came up with 3 different solutions by 3 different regional central banks. And I would just like to quickly say a few words about them. The first one would be Deutsche Bundesbank trigger solution, which constitutes a dedicated blockchain that will trigger a payment in target in T2. So basically you have a dedicated intermediary blockchain infrastructure, if you will, that you can use to trigger a payment in T2. As a huge contrast to that, there is the Banque de France solution, the full DLT solution. They also have a dedicated blockchain, but on that, you actually have the euro as a token. So you represent the euro as a token. So you can pre-fund your wallet on this dedicated blockchain infrastructure and then use that token on that infrastructure to do your payment. And then finally, there's still a very different approach, the TIPS hashlink approach by Banca d'Italia. This one does not create any new kind of infrastructure. What you do here is you take the Market DLT, so the platform, the blockchain network that represents the asset, the security, if you will, and on that you deploy a smart contract which kind of functions as an escrow smart contract. And then the solution just kind of logically couples the payment on TIPS with the transfer of the asset on the Market DLT using secrets and hashes and so forth. So you have 3 very different solutions here, and I'm sure we will also discuss a few aspects of them later in the panel. But now the question is, have these solutions actually been used? And the short answer is yes, of course, they have actually been used, and that is why we're talking here today. A long list of participants actually has already successfully executed a lot of use cases on all 3 solutions. And if you go to the website of the ECB, you can find these participant lists here. You can download this document and you see how many participants actually wanted to be a part of these ECB trials and experiments. And so far, I've been using the term experiments and trials, and I just wanted to quickly make sure that we all know what these 2 terms mean. So that is the first aspect here. So when we talk about the experiments, that is a version of these systems where you do not use real money. So you basically simulate the payment. When we talk about the ECB trials, then real money payments are involved. And while you could actually think that this means that many participants went for the experiments, the other thing is the case. Most participants actually wanted to do the trials, to do things with real money and really get their hands on things and try things out. Now, what you can see when you open the document is that there are a couple of columns in here because they distinguish between different types of participants. First type is the market DLT operators. So those who actually provided a qualified DLT solution to represent processes around the asset leg, the security that would be paid for instance. Then a second type of participant is additional central banks to the three, which have participated like to facilitate the payment leg or also as a node operator in these DLT networks. And finally, about or even more than 50 market participants have performed issuances of securities as one use case, delivery versus payment as one major use case, but also cross-border payments or just payments in general to test the provided platforms, but more importantly also the coupling of the market DLT and these payment solutions. So this is in a nutshell what the experiments and the trials are about and the three solutions that have been provided. And as I already mentioned, one clear focus of the central bank here of these solutions lies with delivery versus payment. For those of you not so familiar with the term, delivery versus payment means that there are two parties, party A and party B. One has an asset in their possession, one wants to pay for it, and you basically couple these two legs, the asset leg and the payment leg, together. And the most important aspect of this delivery versus payment is atomicity, so that both parties can actually trust the fact that there is no scenario where one of the two parties will end up with both the payment for the money and the asset. So there's some mechanism that makes sure that both is actually transferred. And because these two parties, party A and B, are usually untrusting parties, this DVP atomicity can be achieved usually only by placing trust in some sort of third entity or third system. And something that is often discussed is involving blockchain. So one of these systems could be a public blockchain, which means that both parties would actually place their trust in the technology and in the participants or the operators of the network. So basically saying, if you use the Ethereum blockchain, we trust that all the validators, they will act as they have in the past, and we can trust that this ecosystem works and we can use a public blockchain. A second idea of doing this, of placing trust in something, would be a neutral market participant, some sort of financial market infrastructure like a CSD. And I'm happy we have someone from a CSD here in this round today. So this is what happens most of the time today. But what you can also do is you can say, well, there is a common dependency of these market participants, because they both anyway have to trust in the central bank, which provides the payment in the end, which provides the cash, the money. So you can also say, if there's a way in trusting the central bank with this, then you could also address the trust issue in the delivery versus payment. Now I would just quickly like to show how such delivery versus payment might differ between the world today and using the ECB trial infrastructure as we have just seen it. So this is going to be real quick, and it's going to be really simplified, of course. So say we have party A and party B, one has the euros, one has the securities. They could both go to the CSD and say, hey, please do this DVP for us. And the CSD would then go to a security settlement system, usually T2S in the euro context, and transfer the asset from one party to the other, and then also facilitate the payment in their name. Now, this exact process can also be built using these ECB trial infrastructure. You can just replace the security settlement system with a market DLT, and you can also replace the central bank here with a central bank solution that has been provided. But that is not all, of course, that you can do with this ECB trial infrastructure. It gets more interesting when you think of it like this. You still have the party A and party B, and they want to do the same trade, but now you use the market DLT operator where the asset is represented, and you use the central bank ECB trial solution. And now this is just one example of how you can do things with these solutions. What you could go ahead and say, party A locks the asset, says, please lock the asset. I want to make sure that it's locked so we can do a delivery versus payment. Party B says, I'm ready to pay if we can be sure that the asset is locked. So the market DLT operator will tell the central bank ECB trial solution, yes, the asset is indeed locked. The payment will be facilitated on that ECB trial solution. payment successful will go back as a message to the DLT operator, and the transfer of the asset will take place. And since both participants here ultimately have to trust the market DLT operator and the central bank, because the one has to represent the assets in the right way and the other one has to, well, facilitate the payment in the right way anyway, this mechanism here facilitates delivery versus payment atomicity without the CSD. However, interestingly, the number of market participants or of involved parties in general remains the same, right? Before you had the CSD and the central bank, and now you have the market DLT operator and still a central bank solution, which ultimately connects to the central bank. So keeping this in mind, this sort of atomicity question of delivery versus payment, I think we can derive a couple of interesting answers from this. And this is based on the fact that the ECB trials and experiments are widely perceived as a great success, but they also raise a number of questions, of course, that now the market participants and the ECB and all the central banks have to answer. And some of these questions might be, now, have these ECB trials really led to efficiencies that would not have been possible without that infrastructure? Or what could be the future role of a CSD be in such an ecosystem where we've just seen that it could be replaced with this market DLT and central bank interaction? Now, of course, the question is, which of these solutions of the three that I introduced at the beginning will be the ones that is taken to production? And will these ECB trial solutions also allow for further use cases than we've seen in the ECB trials so far? And we will address some of these questions, I'm sure, today in the panel discussion. And with that, thank you so much for listening to this impulse. And I'm now handing over to Joachim Würmeling for the moderation of the panel. And I will stop sharing, and I will give you the full screen of people. Thank you. And you're on mute. Joachim, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. That was a very thoughtful introduction and prepares well the ground for our discussion here. I'm Joachim Würmeling. I'm very happy to moderate this panel today. I'm a lecturer at ESMT Berlin, one of the leading private business schools in Germany, and an attorney at Allen & Overy Sherman, a law firm in Frankfurt. Some of the participants and the audience might know me from my previous occupation as a member of the board of Deutsche Bundesbank, and always very much in favor for all these digital innovation, one part of it what we are discussing here today. You already posed some of the questions we will discuss in our panel, but before we start, I would like people to present themselves and tell us how they were involved in the trials. I'm afraid lots of people who were listening to that panel were not personally involved in the trials, so they are very much interested about what insiders draw from it. But I'm sure there are also other people here in the call who took part in the trials and can contribute to our discussions. So if we may start with the presentation. Michael from DECA, would you start, please?
Yeah, hello, I'm Michael Cyrus. I'm head of securities lending, repo, collateral trading, FX, and digital assets at DECA. We started in 2017, 2018 with our first initiatives regarding blockchain. At the time, this was regarding collateral trading, so securities lending. And after a couple of experiments, we found out that doing securities lending on a blockchain with traditional assets is quite a complex endeavor. And then we had the new Digital Securities Act. And we started to issue the first securities, I think, and I was probably one of the first banks to issue digital securities in Germany. After a while, and after we found that our experiments were successful, we created a startup, Swayet. Swayet is a private and permissioned blockchain, which also participated in the ECB trials. It should become a consortium at a later point in time. And I think we were one of the main users, in the sense that we did a lot of different use cases in repo, securities lending, and issuance of different security types during the ECB trials.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. So now it's the turn of Thilo Dehrenbach from Clearstream Deutsche Börse.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me today. Yes, I am, Mark referred to the CSD. I represent Clearstream Banking, one of the central security depositories in Europe, actually 3 of those that we have in our organization. We process securities on a daily basis with 270 million transactions on an annual basis with 19 trillion of assets in the environment. So a very scalable platform that we look to modernize and of course also take into the digital and tokenization space going forward. We have developed over the years, a little bit like the colleague just mentioned now, that Michael just mentioned now, that we've been participating in trials and experiments in sandbox exercises since the mid-2010s, 15, 16, 17. And we've tried a number of things in the domestic and in the international markets on the cash and security side. And we're quite happy now to be moving on to real production environments, meaning scalable infrastructure where digital and in the future also tokenized securities can be issued, mobilized, and live on a digital environment or on a blockchain. In this sense, many of you will have heard of D7, which is our digital financial market infrastructure that we've launched, where without yet using blockchain technology, we've issued more than 350,000 digital instruments, securities that is, and more than 10 billion worth of value created in the environment. With the trials, and this is the topic of today, we're moving on to the tokenization environment and have made very, very positive experiences in the trial context, and very happy to discuss that and share our views here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thilo. And now I hand over to Christoph Hock from Union Investment.
Joachim, many thanks for having me here today. So Christoph Hock, Head of Tokenization and Digital Assets at Union Investment. We represent the investor side in today's panel. So transformation around technology, key topic for us here at our firm. We started fairly early back in 2015, 2016 to have first touch points with technology in around blockchain. Back in 2019, 2020, we started intensively looking at this topic. Our first investment in a tokenized bond, our kind of moon landing in this space, was executed already back in 21 when we invested at this point of time in the first publicly available tokenized bond. It was one with EIB as an issuer. And in the meantime, we've had a number of more investments in tokenized bonds, tokenized fund shares. So the topic around blockchain, we look from 3 angles. It's infrastructure, it's product, it's the link, the interface to the client, key theme for us. The missing link from our perspective, we've had in the past. So on the one hand, asset on chain was working properly, but cash on chain is also a key requirement for us to realize all the synergies coming with this new technology. And the ECB trials, they gave the opportunity to combine assets on chain with cash on chain, and that's why I absolutely would underline what Marc mentioned. It's a great success story we've seen so far in the exploration phase of the ECB, and yeah, happy to further discuss on this topic now.
Thank you very much. So finally, it's up to Simon as representative of our host today.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name is Simon Papencourt. I'm a manager at DeFi, a colleague of Marc, and I've been working with DeFi for almost 8 years now. And my focus on past project has been usually with banks and financial market institutes. and in particularly DLT and blockchain-specific projects. And in the apologies, in the last year, I was in the lucky position to support clients in their participation of the ECB trials, yeah, I was able to then support them in actually connecting to all three solutions, so the Bundesbank, Banque de France, and Banca d'Italia that Marc was mentioning earlier, and as well as in a wide range of different use cases, from issuances to repo and secondary market trades. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this panel and the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much also for already jumping right into the issue. What is the objective today? We want to give you an update about the learnings from the trial, but I'm afraid that we have, you and the audience have more questions than we could answer today, so we need to structure it a little bit. The first observation is that the initial scope for the trial were quite limited, because the ECB just wanted to find out which out of the three solutions is the best. And as far as my memories are correct, it was rather a compromise, because the ECB Governing Council couldn't decide which way to follow. So they said, okay, just test all the three, and the trials were initiated. But what we see now is that the insights we got go far beyond this issue, and I would be happy if we also could tackle elements or dimensions which go beyond the where easy question, which of the solutions are the best. And the fact that there are so many insights now also come from the fact that these trials and experiments were really wide and deep, with a huge number of participants, a huge number of transactions, use cases, various infrastructures, not only the three solutions of the central banks, but also various blockchains were involved. A lot of different assets were traded. So a big, really a big source of for insights. So it is not so easy maybe to structure the debate, but I would like to start to ask all of you to and you started already with that, to tell us what are your main learnings and insights from the trials where you were involved in. Then in the second part, we should probably turn indeed to the question, which of the solutions you would appreciate the most. And then also in the third part, look ahead, what are the next steps from the ECB, for market participants, for infrastructure providers, probably also for the regulators. And finally, if we have time enough, to have an outlook about, let's say, midterm, long-term view for financial infrastructure. So that would be the four parts we could tackle in the next 40 minutes. And I would like to start with a short tour de table, where everybody can tell what are the main points you take away from the trials. If you could start with Michael again, please.
Yeah, thanks. So first, I think the good part of the story, of course, was that it works, and that we found a lot of people being interested in blockchain. And also being prepared to probably move out of the POC, proof of concept phase, into real experiments. And I think that was something that we found quite interesting. We also did issue a couple of newer securities before the ECB trials, and we found out that going into the ECB trials, the issue sizes will be getting bigger. Yeah, so when we did many of our first transactions in blockchain, then often people were saying, okay, we do something like a 1 week transaction with 100,000 notional amount. And that does make some sense, because people want to address risk and are not 100% sure what actually happens if something goes wrong. But as part of the ECB trials, I think we ended up with a Siemens transaction where we had a notional amount of 300 million. So issue sizes were increasing, and that is actually comforting and also good news. People are somehow getting acquainted with the infrastructure and with blockchain solutions, and are starting to make relevant business and relevant transactions on the blockchain. Transactions that do have an impact on their liquidity profile. So it's not like, okay, I don't do the transaction, and nothing will happen, because I'm funded anyway. It's more like, okay, we do serious business, on the blockchain. I think we were quite positively surprised that we had so many people crossing that threshold. Now, one more learning probably from our side, because we started from the repo and securities lending perspective. And in repo securities lending world, of course, you need to have central bank money. And that is partly because the notional amounts you're moving in the markets are quite large. We're talking here around 500 million, billion, 1.5 billion or else. And there's no way that you just organize this just between different banks. And in particular, after the great financial crisis, 2007-8, there was a clear trend towards central bank money. And this is also why when we started blockchain, we were eyeing for central bank money. We thought, okay, we need central bank money. And now when we started issuing blockchain-based securities, the issue sizes are somewhere between 1 million and 300 million. Now, 1 million and 300 million are notional sizes that each bank actually can also do in commercial bank money. So yes, we found out there is a clear need of central bank money. Central bank money is an integral part of the plumbing of financial markets. There's no doubt, and this is also why we need it. But there's also something to be said about commercial bank money solutions. And I think this is also where we are currently seeing quite a couple of different banks and financial institutions exploring stable coins, e-money tokens, commercial bank money deposits or else. So I think we understand how central bank money works. I think the next step for us and many others in the market is to explore opportunities with respect to commercial bank money.
Well, great. Thank you very much for that, not only insights, but also further considerations for the way forward. So now, Tilo, have you made the same experience? You like something to add? So not all the panelists need to say again what the other panelists said. So thank you.
Of course. Yes, I would concur with Michael very, very much that on the one hand side, the trials and experiments were extremely successful. The range of participants and the range of roles that were involved in one or many use cases was very, very interesting, going from basic issuance to investor transactions to more complex repo transactions, including clearing houses, up to the point which will be our last use case that we will execute out of 10, including also collateral considerations. Because, and this is one of the conclusions that I will repeat again later on, is that the value added sort of services beyond the issuance and redemption of a security and combination of cash on chain or linked to the traditional world, as Marc was pointing out with T2 access, for example, are very, very important. So these value added services beyond cash on chain are one of the things that we concluded are still missing in a wholesale character, but are very, very necessary to complete the picture and to accelerate also the use of the blockchain technology for securities. All three, coming to the payment solutions, we've we've trialed and experimented with all three of those payment solutions that were proposed. And I would not yet conclude as to whether one is better than the other. They were all successful, all have and had their merits, and will also play a role for some time. If we distinguish between short, medium, and long term, I think some of the solutions might be used differently along that timeline. But I would say, at least for the medium term, having the possibility for the traditional market participants to use also and access the traditional rails for payment solutions instead of moving wholesale into a DLT environment, also for the cash side, is going to be important. Nonetheless, and I think this was mentioned by Marc in his introductions, having cash and securities in one environment, so allowing for DVP on chain in this case, I think has merits. It's not yet the sort of holy grail of blockchain technology, or will not significantly in isolation accelerate the adoption of blockchain technology for the sorts of transactions. Many more things have to fall in place, but it's extremely important and valuable step forward. The money quality, to Michael's point, I think we need to underline. For us as a market infrastructure, of course, both central as well as commercial bank money as money qualities are relevant. The central bank money use, of course, in the interbank transactions is extremely relevant because of the sizes that we're moving. To Michael's point, commercial bank money transactions are also relevant, and stable coins are probably a payment means of choice that can be appropriate in this sense. For us, in the context of the trials, in the context of T2, T2S transactions, so environments that are still in the traditional world and remain there for some time, linking cash and securities and linking traditional and blockchain technology, modern technologies, I think remains very, very important for now and for some time. I'll stop there for a moment.
Well, thank you very much. Also for relating to what the previous panelists said. So now from the investor's point of view, that's a different perspective, of course. How did it work, Christoph?
Yeah, from our perspective, as already mentioned before and highlighted by my two colleagues, also a great success story what we've seen as a part of the exploration phase right now. Joachim, what I like to do is coming from a big picture. Why do we need central bank money on chain? So from an asset manager's perspective, the key question for us is what's in it for the client? Which kind of benefits can we deliver by implementing this new technology for our investors? And the current market infrastructure, from a big picture perspective, has a number of pain points. So when you look at the entire chain of, for example, a bond, this was the instrument most use cases, most trials of the ECB were based on. Regardless whether you look at the issuance process, secondary market trading, settlement clearing, custody, or the life cycle events, a number of pain points we see in nowadays industry. And blockchain technology, from our perspective, has the potential to make transactions from a processing perspective much quicker, to reduce risk, and again, what's important for our investors, to reduce cost, where investors obviously will also benefit from. And a number of topics we can solve when having tokenization related to the asset leg, but obviously to implement all of these synergies, especially when it comes to settlement mechanisms, cash on chain is a key requirement. So the one, assets on chain and cash on chain, they have to come both hand in hand. And what we haven't had in the past was, as now delivered by the ECB, was really a 6-month period. Marc, he was highlighting the number of participants. So all in all, we are at 75 plus participants. So that's from a global perspective, the biggest phase where we were working with assets on chain and cash on chain in combination. And from my perspective, the promising thing is also that there's a high chance to go into production with wholesale central bank money somewhere in the near future. So looking at volumes traded in the traditional industry, in equity markets, in fixed income markets, we have on a daily basis about 60 to 80 billion euros traded in equities, European equities. We have about 100 billion traded in European bond markets. And looking at money solutions, I can imagine that this business will be executed based on stable coins or commercial money bank tokens. So a central bank orchestrated solution clearly is required. And I think the three solutions we've seen, trigger solution by Bundesbank, the Banque d'Italia solution, and also the token solution by Banque de France, they give us a clear guidance where our central bank is heading to. And as said, it's from our perspective, from the asset manager's perspective, a clear requirement that we have an appropriate central bank orchestrated money solution in place going forward. So therefore, to repeat where I started with, from our perspective, great success story, and very promising that pretty soon we could go into production from this exploratory approach we've seen right now.
Great, thank you very much also for commenting on the necessity to have CBDC for that, for these kind of transactions. Simon, well, the participants all at some point in time ran into trouble and into difficulties and wanted to know more about the technology, and then they probably turn to you. So you might have a very deep insight here from the technological point of view. So what were your experiences?
Yeah, first of all, I really agree with the statements my colleagues have just made. And I want to pick up on Theo's comment that all three solutions are a success and offer their merits. And I think this is really important that they're quite different in their approach, but they might, or they address different use cases or different solutions. So it depends on the needs of the clients, of where the asset lives, what solution might be then the best fit. So we had the Banca d'Italia, which I don't think has seen the most use cases, but it's quite a neat solution because, as Marc was mentioning, you have a very small escrow smart contract that you can deploy, and you can deploy it on any blockchain that plays in favor for public blockchains. And the buyer can be sure the asset is locked because they will have the same view on the same blockchain and can check this for themselves. And as we have already discussed, the trust is placed in the central banks, and the Banca d'Italia will guarantee that if you send the money with their TIPS hashlink gateway in the ECB trials or later on in the production in the TIPS, that you will get your asset. Because if the seller would not send you the asset, the Banca d'Italia can provide you with the password, so to say, to the escrow account, and you can retrieve it yourself. So I think this is a really nice, neat setup that allows easy adaptation to different blockchains, and we don't have any large invest in building infrastructure from the seller or buyer point of view. We then have Christoph mentioned the Bundesbank trigger solution. Here, the greatest advantage to my point at the moment, or particularly during the ECB trials, is the direct settlement in T2. So whereas the other two solutions were relying on placing the money into an escrow account in the morning, and then you retrieve or can retrieve the money back, or will get the money back in the evening or afternoon. The trigger solution allows you to settle instantly in your T2 dedicated cash accounts. And for this, they built a private blockchain on Hyperledger Fabric. They're monitoring the activities here. They use, I don't want to get too technical, hash time lock contracts. So they hear the time component here that will allow you to then essentially lock the money as well. In the background, it's moved to an escrow account of Bundesbank. And here, again, a secret is being shared. If you take the asset out, the money out, the secret for the asset is also going to be shared, and you can retrieve the asset as well. So I think that's the main benefit of the Bundesbank, this really close integration to the target solution. And I also agree with the statements before. I think it was mentioned several times that the full DLT solution by Banque de France, where you really have tokenized money, can also make a very strong argument for this. I think this is kind of an intermediate step. So if you look at the early documents of the ECB trials, where the Eurosystem set out and looked into the different solutions, they had like the trigger and bridging solutions of Banca d'Italia and Banque de France, and then have the intermediate interoperability solution with Banque de France. But there's the next step then, that you have an integration solution where asset and money share the same infrastructure, and there you can actually have atomicity, as Marc was explaining, within one transaction. So it is technologically ensured that either both sides, both legs are being executed, or none of them, because it's just in one transaction on the blockchain. And the tokenized euros in the full DLT solution by Banque de France, I think, is an important step in this direction. Shows the potential that we can leverage here.
Okay, thank you very much also for commenting on the various solutions. That's brought that immediately into our second part. What is the best solution? How to proceed? So please, dear panelists, put yourself in the position of Piero Cipollone, the director of ECB responsible for payment. And he's now asked to make to the executive board a proposal how to proceed. So what would you propose to Mrs. Lagarde and her colleagues, and later on in the governing council, to the governors of the ECB? How would you proceed? Would you move on with only one solution, with two solutions, with all the three solutions? Would you rather adopt for a consecutive approach? So what should the ECB now do? Well, please step in as you like. Yeah, sorry, please, Thilo.
Should I start, Christoph? Okay, thank you. So let's start with the environment that the ECB needs to monitor, and that is will always be on their minds day and night. One is, and we've mentioned two of them, but I'll mention a third one. The first one is T2 from a cash perspective, target to securities from a securities settlement perspective, and ECMS from a securities collateralization perspective. Those three elements, if you take them as a triangle, visualize them as a triangle, are front and center to the considerations, of course, of the ECB, with all the monetary policy and stability questions that link, of course, as an underlying current. But if you take those three elements, it is important that they ensure that the environment that they operate, the environment that they provide for the market to manage risks in the transactions that they enter into, are stable and maintained. So now, with these three payment solutions, we have seen successful transactions, and we have seen, I think, appropriate results, very appropriate results across all three. I mentioned earlier that timing is one of the elements that they will be taking into consideration following the review and recap and debrief, if you like, of the trial period, which is which ones of these solutions deliver today, tomorrow, and the day after. And in that sense, I would, in his place, probably not select and isolate a single sort of solution, but consider what the market, and the vast majority of the market is still in maneuvering in the traditional environment, what sort of solutions move the market forward without forcing too much change onto the industry. Therefore, a connection between traditional environments and modern technology, blockchain technology, I think is a very good solution. As a complement, a pure and combined cash and securities platform or orchestration on-chain is equally important. But I think one of the points that when we look at considerations by the ECB that I think Christoph might have made, or one of the other colleagues, is a question of timing. We would strongly recommend that the ECB does not now close the trial period and wait for many months or possibly years to then proceed with a scalable BAU sort of implementation of the payment rails as they offered them, but rather communicate soon to the market how a continued ongoing usage of 1, 2, or 3 or other payment solutions would be made available. The market is ready. All of the market participants that participated in our use cases and that participated in general were very happy and very positive about the outcomes of the trials and would like to see them continued. A transitory period would be ideal, but we understand that that might not be possible. But an early reintroduction and reactivation, if you like, of the payment solutions for the market following the trials would be strongly recommended, and I think very welcomed by the market participants. Last point, I think the ECB is in a very strong and in a very good position to drive harmonization and standardizations around both the cash and the securities leg, of course, driven by the securities leg, and defining a little bit the framework, not in a too descriptive way, but in a more general way, the sort of requirements, minimum requirements of market participants, DLT operators, technological capabilities, process and operational elements to guide the market as to if they reopen the payment solutions in the hopefully near future, as you rightly say, Christoph, what sort of requirements they would like to see to ensure a robust environment and give the market clarity about how, when, and in what framework they can re-enter these activities. I think that would be good and a very guided measure that we would very strongly support and would very much welcome. And I think many market participants will as well, but we'll hear from the other colleagues what their view is.
Joachim, I would like also to underline Thilo's views of from our perspective, the very best solution would be to go into production with wholesale central bank money somewhere in the near future. And I guess it's a kind of three-step approach we could imagine as a market participant. So on the one hand, clear communication shortly after the exploration phase ends in November. Thilo, he already mentioned that from a financial market perspective, would be not sufficient to go into a quiet period. So to come with a kind of roadmap for the financial market would be extremely helpful. Second point, which of the solutions could go into production pretty soon? So I guess looking at the token-based solution by Banque de France, from what we've heard, it probably would take 2 years plus to go into production. Given the fact that with Mica now being live and stable coins could come in production already in 25, I think a wholesale CBDC solution by the ECB somewhere in 27, 28 potentially wouldn't be helpful for the market. So therefore, Bundesbank trigger solution, from what we've heard, could be ready for going into production end of 25, beginning of 26. So this could be the second step. And with trigger solution live as wholesale central bank money, we could work as an industry on a token-based solution with the Banque de France approach as a kind of nucleus going then into production a couple of years later. So point number one, communication. Second point, going into production with a trigger solution somewhere end of next year. Third point, working on a token-based solution, which I guess market as a whole would need to really benefit from all the topics we've mentioned before. And last point from my side, we've seen looking at jurisdictions which are ahead of the curve when it comes to tokenization, like Switzerland, also like Singapore. We've seen the key role a central bank plays to further evolve token economy. And SNB and MAS, they've done a fantastic job. And I think Bundesbank in combination with ECB could be the first one with a go live environment.
And Joachim, sorry.
Please.
Sorry, just one thought on that. Mr. Cipollone will always have the capital markets union in mind, particularly the digital capital markets union in mind. And I think what we're discussing here is one building block, but an important building block towards that, digitizing financial markets, both from a securities, but indeed also from a cash perspective.
Yeah, indeed.
Just one quick thought.
It is really amazing how very different issues come together in these trials, and this famous remarkable speech of Piero Cipollone on the Digital Capital Markets Union is a big driver also to keep this running. And he, by the way, in one of his last speeches, said himself that he knows that it is paramount that central banks provide clear direction. What I ask myself, please allow me that remark: how can industry organize to express this kind of expectation to the central bank? Because central bankers are very, let's say, timid and shy. They are not the people who spell out big things and big programs. In this respect, the speech of Cipollone was an exemption by itself. But I think it is a good time that industry comes together in the various bodies, associations, and write a letter to ECB to draw their conclusions, make it public, so that ECB can also can relate to that when they make up their mind. Looking at the whole ecosystem, the framework, we talked a lot about what the ECB could do. What are other market participants up to do? Are there still gaps on the legal side? Does the legislator need to do anything? So how does the entire ecosystem need to develop in the next months or next year to make this innovation happen?
Yeah, first, if I may, also in support of what has been said, I think that the Bundesbank solution was not that new, right? We did the first trials already 2 years or 2.5 years ago. Then we waited until today. So now if you have to wait another 2 or 3 years, this actually would be a clear sign that that innovation is not coming to the market as quick as we like, and I think as quick as the market is ready for it. We do have the Digital Securities Act in Germany. We now had numerous issuances in the billion with different counterparties. So it's not 100% proven in the sense that we have hundreds of billions of movements. But I think many people have tried out the legal possibilities and came to the conclusion that this is working. So what we now need is stability to create an ecosystem. Stability also means ideally we will be able to have instantaneous payment, for instance, via the trigger solution. That clearly is a feature that we in the market do like a lot. But if we could retain that, and then we can also start looking into other parts which would be needed to close this ecosystem. And I think something that we have discussed with a couple of clients is, of course, secondary market liquidity. Yeah, at the moment, you're using many of the blockchain assets. I think clients and issuers and also investors, they appreciate that the whole process from structuring also to the primary sales is all electronic and is transparent. And that actually has helped many people to reduce associated timelines. Sometimes from 7 or 8 or 10 days, with one issuance, we actually came down to something like 30 minutes where we were able to structure and put the deal into the primary. So time is of the essence. But also, once the primary is over and it goes into secondary market, you need to have some sort of secondary market liquidity. At the moment, I think that is a weak point, and this also makes it quite difficult, for instance, for asset managers to invest. If you take a look into many of the trials, you probably find out that there are a lot of treasuries from banks involved, but not that many asset managers. Ours is no exception. Because our asset manager said, okay, we have to work on secondary market liquidity. And then there's a second one, which I think is also important and is also somewhere in the realm of central bank money, and that is central bank eligibility. Thilo already mentioned the role of collateral. If we want to close an ecosystem, a financial ecosystem, we need to have a solution where we don't treat electronic or digital securities worse than we treat traditional securities. And one of the very important criteria for investing and one of the ingredients to the spread of an asset is also in how far it is ECB eligible. So I think central banks are not even done. So it's, they ideally we continue, but they need to help out to build or to replicate what they have done in other markets as well, also for the digital space, because otherwise we will find it difficult to push this innovation forward.
Well, thank you. Well, we are running out of time or coming to a close of this meeting. So I would like to pose one last question before wrapping up. In this speech, Piero Cipollone said, with a long-term view, that this blockchain technology could reshape the very structure of the financial intermediation. So not only different techniques, operations, settlements, and various changes in the procedure, but the very nature of financial mediation with other transaction spaces, with other liquidity and deepness of markets. So from your experiences with the trials, do you see these far-reaching structural changes for financial markets?
I think, Joachim, what we've seen is the creation of new roles in the ecosystem. So we have with the registrar for tokenized securities, we have created a kind of decentral role of the traditional CSD that's under the Electronic Securities Act, which came place here, for example, in Germany back in 21. We have new roles of custodians for tokenized securities. And I guess that's what Cipollone meant when saying that questioning role of intermediaries in the current eco space. Clearly what we have to take into account is financial robustness, trust into the financial system is key, and a full decentralization, to be fair, I couldn't see, but questioning existing oligopolies in the market, driving costs down by making use of the new token economy system, that's clearly something we could imagine, and that's also something where our end investors would clearly benefit from.
Sure. Other comments on that last question?
Yeah, I think.
Go on, Michael. No, Michael, you go first.
Okay, I think so if we are able to code and or come up with intelligent code and program the whole life cycle of assets, including the cash leg, that would certainly be a game changer in many respects. Because you could set some of these assets more or less on autopilot.
Right.
And at the moment, part of banking and capital markets is quite expensive because we have these super silos administrating all the assets and all the corporate actions in between. And I think if we would have programmable assets and programmable cash, then we could link these two together and take out a huge chunk of the cost. And the other one is, if we get cash and assets closer together, then at least from my perspective, we will be able to create a lot of netting benefits with respect to balance sheet, with respect to capital, with respect to liquidity that we currently do not have. So in the end, creating these netting benefits would free up most likely billions of capital and billions of liquidity and balance sheet in the European Union. And I think this is why it's important that we follow this road and that we continue to be successful, and that the ECB and the central banks and the authorities are helping us to develop that market segment.
Well, nice outlook. The organizers say we have a couple of minutes left, so also to take on board the final comments of Thilo and Simon before I wrap up.
Perfect, thank you. I think the aspect of operational efficiencies and risk reductions in those operational processes, I think, is a key promise of the technology. I'm not saying it's an unfounded promise, but it needs to be delivered still at scale, at a unit level. I think it is already showing that it can deliver these things. Three other thoughts on that. I think Christoph hinted at that. The aspects of the need for, especially in our wholesale environment, of neutrality, trust, reliability, scalability, of availability of the service and the service provider for years and decades are and remain relevant, or whatever technology you use. And I think that's something that we must keep in mind also when we look at the types of players and the roles in the industry today, but also tomorrow, whether we use blockchain technology or modern traditional technology. In the end, you still have the issuer, you have the investor, you have some of the intermediaries who are playing a role, call them CSDs or not, but at least you need someone that orchestrates in a neutral and reliable manner an environment. And there are parties that can play and should be playing those roles. We've also seen in the repo transactions that the risk profiles of the transactions do not change. The technology doesn't take away risk in the transaction as such immediately, right? And that's also something that we must keep in mind when we think about how we can shorten and quicken the process, but also remember that there are parties in the intermediary chain that are quite relevant for the security of those transactions. And last comment has just escaped me. I'm sorry, but those three elements were particularly important for me to mention. There are roles that need to be maintained. Risks don't change spontaneously because of technology, or do not improve spontaneously because of technology. Yet we see the unit benefits, but it needs to scale up, because only when we have high liquidity, we also have the efficiencies in the operational process that we want to deliver.
Well, thank you very much. Thilo, Simon, you like something to add?
Just a few words. I very much agree with what has been said before. I think, Michael, you mentioned the settlement process was much, much quicker. And I heard this as well in the market. And I not necessarily think that is specific to DLT, or that it's only possible with DLT. But I think having a shared infrastructure really encourages this, because we mentioned disintermediation. It also reduces the need for reconciliation, and it would give us a good step forward to pursue this. I think Pierre Gonzalo, Pierre Cipollone was also mentioned the European ledger, or whatever it's called, so that we then bring both assets to the same ledger, and I think only then we will really see the real benefits. And coming back to what was, I think, the previous question is what would be needed. I see really the clear roadmap, and I agree with what has been said before, that we need something on short notice, but I would also really much like to see the plan for the next steps, and that we see or can plan with something like an interoperability solution, a European ledger, and I think the market is ready for this and is actually anticipating it. And until then, I mean, there's some other project has been going on at the moment for cross-currency payments, and the project Agora for the Bank of International Settlement and so on. So I think it's going to stay interesting for the next few years, and I'm looking forward to be part of this.
Well, thank you very much. Well, maybe some concluding remarks. I was really struck by the fact that there was such clear messages come out of this panel, and which are shared by all the participants, which come from a very, very different world. Which is in an exploration phase very rare, but the clear messages are the experience is positive. It was a success. Everybody wishes to continue in this innovation path. The benefits are not only, say, cost efficiency, but also risk reduction, and there's a clear, let's say, macro perspective for the development of the efficiency of the market, even capital markets union. There's so a much broader, let's say, scope for change. A third point is that a signal from the central bank is now needed. The industry wants the central bank to tell them what they're going to do. You were in favor for, let's say, more step approach to continue. You would not decide for one of the solutions yet, but rather have the low-hanging fruits with the trigger solution from Bundesbank now, and other solutions maybe later. That's, I think, a wise approach. And of course, lots of things are to do. Europe is in, let's say, leading group globally, but needs to carry on to not lose this position. Well, I dare to close with a picture in these areas of innovation, in particular in wholesale and digital assets. There's also always the saying of hen and egg dilemma. Yeah. So, of course, the ECB is not a hen, and the trials are not such a procedure. But what we saw here today on this panel was nonetheless an egg. Thank you very much for participating in this discussion. Hope to see you again in this or another constellation. Thank you to the audience for listening, and I hope this was instructive for you, and you got some insights and messages from these round, and everybody looking forward how things develop. Thank you very much.
Yes,
thanks,
also thank you
Thanks
from our side. Thanks, Joachim, for the great moderation, and thanks to all the panelists for the great insights. It was a pleasure having you at this panel discussion, as is also shown by all the people who have stuck around for the extra 8 minutes watching you making your final statements. So thanks a lot, and hope to see you all soon. To all the viewers, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.